As a child, and possibly as an adult, you will have seen countless films and TV shows aimed at kids. Nickelodeon, CBBC, Disney, Pixar, Cartoon Network, CITV were all part of our lives growing up. They gave us unforgettable characters that we now love to see reimagined as college students or zombies. But did you ever notice any LGBT people in these shows? Probably not. Or if you did, there would almost certainly have been no mentions of words like gay, lesbian or transgender. No kissing or physical affection between same-sex couples, even when opposite-sex couples were allowed to hug and kiss on screen. They would not have been main characters, or they would have been queer-coded characters steeped in negative stereotypical portrayals. I saw hundreds of depictions of parents, but not one was a same-sex couple. I saw hundreds of stories about crushes and dates, and not one was a girl who liked a girl or a boy who liked a boy. And this is something that desperately needs to change. However, when this is brought up, there's a strong opposition, which says things like, let kids be kids and stop trying to force an agenda on them. When this subject gets brought up and language like propaganda, unacceptable and being subjected to are thrown around, I think it's very telling. LGBT people are a fact of life, yet are not seen as equal. We have these ideas about gay, bisexual and trans people that intersect with things like the Hays Code, the AIDS crisis, Section 28, to perpetuate the idea that anything other than straight is perverse, that it is adult and explicit, and inappropriate and inherently sexual. A man and a woman kissing is perfectly acceptable, even the lowest age-rated films. But a man and a man kissing in the exact same way is seen as explicit. But why is this important? Sure, gay people exist, but do they need to be in kids' shows? Well, of course, this inclusivity would benefit LGBT kids and those questioning their sexuality and gender identity. But it would also be positive for those children who have someone close to them who's LGBT, a parent, sibling, family friend, aunt or uncle, school friend or otherwise. Research by William T. L. Cox at the University of Wisconsin-Madison shows that negative stereotyping and prejudiced mindsets in media contribute significantly to bullying, harassment, depression, and suicide. LGBT youth, even from ages as young as 10, are at higher risk of suicide than their straight and cis peers, being 4 times as likely to attempt to take their own life and 6 times more likely to self-harm. But even if we don't care about the well-being of millions of children across the world, or the way it would help straight and cis kids who don't know any LGBT people to be more open-minded and accepting of those who are different to them, we should care about the fact that including LGBT people in kids' media is just reflecting reality. So surely there have been some instances of representation. Well, yes, a tiny number of attempts at representation have been made, the earliest I can find being in 2004 in, of all things, an episode of the cartoon show Braceface entitled Games, Set Up and Match. This early example was remarkably progressive. It had the show's protagonist attempt to set up her 2 friends Dion and Houston, who are both gay men. The episode, in a thinly veiled way, tackles the idea that just because a guy is gay doesn't mean they're attracted to every guy they see, and that you can't force people to like each other. The show never uses the word gay, but it's pretty clear in the text and subtext that these 2 men aren't straight, and it's treated as completely normal that they would fancy another man. They, of course, don't kiss. Another, more infamous example is that of Susan and Cheryl in a 2014 episode of Good Luck Charlie, who were the first same-sex parents ever depicted on American children's television. Their appearance on screen is part of a joke between the main parents on the show, and although they are there for a brief scene only, this was enough to garner a storm of complaints from the American public. Another example of the sexuality of a character being revealed as the punchline to a joke is the character of Mitch in Paranorman, who is revealed to have a boyfriend at the very end of the movie. This twist ending relies on both the absence of gay characters from kids' media and the stereotype that gay men are not the athletic jock types to create an unexpected payoff. We never see the boyfriend and certainly don't get any acts of affection between the two, but the reference to a boyfriend is explicit. However, a troubling trend which falls in line with the prejudiced idea that gay characters are inherently sexual and adult is that of studios, writers or producers treading a fine conservative line by announcing that their characters are gay, but off-air. How to Train Your Dragon 2 is a perfect example of how a film or show can attempt to keep both sides happy, but ultimately favouring the side of people opposed to having LGBT characters for kids. They put out before the film's release a lot of statements and articles that one of the characters was gay and would come out during the film. As it turns out, the scene in question was not even barely distinguishable as a coming out scene in any way, for an adult, let alone a child to understand. Other examples include the suggestions that Marceline and Princess Bubblegum from Adventure Time were or are a couple, and that Mr. Simmons, a school teacher in Hey Arnold, is gay. These examples are troubling because they are ultimately not representation at all. If it's not explicitly stated in the show in a way that children the show is aimed at can understand, it is willfully hiding representation. Perhaps the most famous example of this from the last few years is the case of Korra and Asami from Legend of Korra. In the final episode of the show, the two women face each other, hold hands, and essentially walk off into the sunset together. Anything more explicit than that, according to one show writer, would not have been supported by the network. Off screen, he's talked about Korrasami in no uncertain terms, saying, "Korrasami is canon. There is no denying it. That is the official story." Concluding a post on Tumblr about the topic with the line, "Was it a slam dunk for queer representation? I think it falls short of that, but hopefully it is a somewhat significant inching forwards." That inching forwards can also come with steps back. Steven Universe is a clear triumph with same-sex romance, love, kissing, and mediations on gender. However, only this year in the UK aired an episode of the show where same-sex romance had been censored. The romantic dance between Pearl and Rose Quartz instead featured close-ups of completely different characters. Many people say it's actually the overseas market in Asia and China specifically which causes shows to downplay LGBT characters. But the fact the UK changed the original US show for a British audience suggests it's more complex than that. In a statement, Cartoon Network UK said, "In the UK we have to ensure everything on air is suitable for children at any age at any time. We do feel that the slightly edited version is more comfortable for local kids and their parents. Research shows that the UK kids often watch with younger siblings without parental supervision. Be assured that as a channel and network we celebrate diversity evident across many of our shows and characters." However, this isn't actually true. The description of the British U or universal rating, the lowest age rating that we have in this country, says characters may be seen kissing or cuddling, and there may be references to sexual behaviour. This cute romantic scene was clearly too sexual for Cartoon Network. So is it all doom and gloom? Well, we do have some good examples of representation. They are rare, but we have started to make progress. Of course, I have the ones I've already mentioned, but in the UK, perhaps the best example is Doctor Who, which since its reboot in 2005 has featured both recurring and incidental characters who aren't straight. The Doctor actually says the word gay, and the first season later brought us Captain Jack Harkness, an omnisexual character who flirts across genders and who kisses the Doctor in the same way he kisses his female companion Rose. The show does an admirable job of showing both queer background characters an everyday part of life, but also highlighting specific characters and issues around these identities. In the episode The Unicorn and the Wasp, the tragic fate of a same-sex couple is commented on by Donna, with her protesting about the horrible and unfair situation they were in as gay men in the early 20th century. So where does that leave us? I would love to say that we're making great strides forward, but with the UK censoring same-sex couples and almost no transgender characters to speak of either, it isn't going to be that easy. But the more people are aware of the disparity, the more people thinking critically about their media, the more people demanding representation, the more our voices can be lifted up. Until then, I'll be looking forward to the day when Sesame Street can include same-sex parents and the lead protagonist on a Disney show can serenade her female crush, and the world can feel just a little happier and safer for the LGBT kids watching.